In 2016, Frank Ocean released his album Blond, and 6 years later, this album has proven to be a timeless masterpiece in modern music. Although many aspects of this album contribute to the timeless nature of it, including the harmonizing vocals and bold choices of minimal soundscapes, I believe the concept of this album is what ultimately makes it a masterpiece, namely the concept of identity and how our modern structures are incapable of accurately expressing it. In this video, I'm going to break down Frank Ocean's take on identity by focusing on the album cover. Shot by photographer Wolfgang Tillman, we see a shot of Ocean in a bathtub, hair dyed green, with his hand covering his face. At first glance, this looks mildly contradictory to the title of the album. Why contrast the album title Blonde with green hair dye? Before even listening to this project, we have a glimpse of just how nuanced the term blonde is in the context of the entire album. Here, what Frank's doing is, in a really subtle way, showing us the absurdity of labels. By contrasting the word blonde with both the masculine and feminine writing of the term, one with an E at the end of it and one without, we see a take on how these words are inherently limited in expressing the nuances of identity. To characterize blonde hair as either male or female puts people in boxes they may not want to accept. This is why Frank Ocean decides to dye his hair green for the cover, as to make a statement that he and many others out there exist outside of these conventional labels. I think Frank covering his face while naked in a bathtub also plays into this theme of identity, specifically how he, through the metaphor of being naked, feels vulnerable because of his status as a famous musician who discusses very personal things with the world. He is, in essence, showing himself to the world in a very human way through his music. However, by covering his face, he's still trying to mask himself despite his state of vulnerability, almost like he's ashamed to let himself be completely shown in the public eye. Rappers and R&B artists have always tended to be a certain way. Popular rappers often show off their jewelry, brag about the women they have, and the cars they drive. Popular R&B artists are generally in the business of making pop songs about love and women. Once again, Frank Ocean does not fit in either of these categories, and must exist outside of what is conventionally accepted as an appropriate personality for a popular musician. Being an outcast, whether that be in relation to his sexuality, the type of music he makes, or the themes he discusses, is something we see both explicitly and implicitly in this album cover. Frank is telling us that he doesn't fit into any conventional labels, while also simultaneously showing us that he feels ashamed of being a black sheep within the music industry. If there's one thing this album cover doesn't get enough credit for, it's Frank Ocean's ability to portray himself in a considerably human way, by showing us who he is and what he feels in a subtle yet profound way. This to me is beautiful, not only because we get to understand Frank Ocean and his music better, but we get to experience the beauty and complexity of being human, with all the struggles and barriers we face along the way. We can never exist outside our own individual consciousness, but with art like the cover of Blonde, we get to, at least briefly, step into the shoes of another human being. And if we look close enough, we begin to feel just how similar our human experiences can be, despite the arbitrary divisions we tend to create amongst ourselves. So with Frank Ocean demystifying popular artistry and sinking into his own unique self, we are reminded that we too can be ourselves, despite the labels and shame we feel pulling us in the opposite direction.